some mom jokes. Dog mom jokes. Dog mom jokes.
You can tell your mama jokes?
All right, good evening. I'm going to call to order the Monday, December 9th, 2024 City Commission meeting. We're going to begin with invocation given by Commissioner Douglas, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. If you are able, please stand.
So I've offered this invocation before at this time of year, and every time I go back and revisit it, I think, yes, these are the sentiments I want to share. People celebrate many things in the month of December: birth, miracles, harvest, the solstice, the changing of the seasons, community. A common theme among them is generosity and giving. So rather than bowing our heads, let us take a moment to look at those around us, here in this room and at home. We see our friends, neighbors, family, loved ones. We are well fed, warm, and comfortable. Tomorrow, let's look a little harder, a little further. Look for those who have no home, no family, no food, and precious little holiday joy. In a month of joy and seasonal celebrations, let us also celebrate our humanity by opening our pocketbooks and our hearts to those less fortunate. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Commissioner Douglas. Now on to item number 4 of the agenda, which is approval of the agenda. Would anyone like to make a motion? Commissioner Macy moves approval. Commissioner Herzog. Commissioner Herzog, second. Any discussion? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Next up is public comment. The City Commission values and relies on the input of our fellow citizens to make decisions. Now is the time set aside for the public to address the City Commission on any city-related issues, both on the agenda and not. I ask that comments be directed to the City Commission as a whole and not to individual commissioners. If you wish to speak tonight at public comment, please wait until recognized by me, Mayor Pro Tem Hunt, then come to the podium. For the record, you will state your name and address. Please be mindful that the City Commission wants to hear from everyone who wishes to speak. Comments are limited to 3 minutes or less per speaker, not per topic. There is a timer at the podium to help you keep track of your allotted time. If you do not wish to speak tonight, please don't hesitate at any time to email or call us, the City Commissioners, with your comments. Please note that the City Commission will not respond directly to questions during public comment. However, we are taking notes and will address the questions when the agenda topic is discussed or refer it to the proper city department if it is a matter not scheduled on the agenda this evening. Also, our interim city manager is taking notes and will look into matters as needed. All right, so who is first? Ms. Oliver?
Good evening. This is to speak to the project considered for conditional rezoning at the southeast corner of West 13 Mile and Prairie Avenue that proposes constructing a 3-story multiple family building with 10 units on a lot zoned for only 2 units. This overreach on this lot displays the developer's greed to jam 53 occupants into tiny apartments on this small site. While the city letter on page 394 of tonight's packet in item 3 states that the site size precludes the petitioner from receiving a reasonable return on investment, please note that financial reasons do not apply when a developer argues for more density and special approvals. Financial gain is not a reason to approve a variance. Who gets to decide what is reasonable after all? In addition, this aesthetically challenged design features a disproportionate, awkward, 3-story shape up on stilts that rather looks like Noah's Ark would have after it suffered a fire and got washed up on the beach, and will be particularly displeasing to the surrounding community's character. As resident Patricia Bates pointed out to you in an email, this hulking 3-story building amongst the 1- and 2-story buildings along that stretch of West 13 Mile Road would be an eye-catching landmark, but not in a good way. She also pointed out to you that Consumer Energy's nearby pipe farm is already an eyesore on this part of West 13 Mile, and that although the fence that was built around it to hide the pipes is equally unattractive and added to the eyesore problem. This neighborhood that lives alongside busy 13 Mile Road deserves more care, consideration, and respect. Since this proposed 3-story building will impose on the privacy of the neighbors, the south side, which faces the neighborhood, should have no windows, just as the east elevation has none. This neighborhood should be treated much better and shown greater respect. It's your job to listen to the residents who are the experts on their own neighborhood and incorporate their concerns into these plans rather than kowtow to a project that will stack them and pack them at this tiny site. Do not hypocritically violate your own positioning as compassionate, fair, and an equitable city. Instead, do what's right for these neighbors, follow our zoning ordinances, demand more of the architect and developer on behalf of the protections of the neighborhood, and deny this project. If the master plan is passed as is, these types of projects will no longer have to ask for variances. For more information or to support us, help support the neighborhoods, please visit protectroyaloak.com. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Oliver. Who's next?
Good evening, and thank you for this opportunity to talk to you. My name is Robert Houston. I live at 821 Woodcrest Drive, Royal Oak. I've been there for 38 years, and I am the property owner. My purpose in coming to you tonight is to draw the Commission's attention to the cancellation of open swim and lap swim programs, as well as the end of learn to swim programs that have been going on for 30 years in the city of Royal Oak. If you were not aware of that, I'm sure Councilwoman Macy would have brought that to you eventually. However, I wanted to bring this to you because it's a very personal thing to me. I've been coming to the swimming program, doing the lap swimming in the evenings for 23 years. Both my daughters learned to swim in the Royal Oak high schools. My granddaughter had her first opportunity to go off the diving board at one of these open swims. I have a vested interest in swimming programs in general, but I just want to point out to you that Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts use these open swims for their swimming badges and so forth. High school athletes use the open swim, lap swim times to get advanced training or after season training. There was a piano teacher, 79 years old, who decided when she was 79 to start working out swimming, and her intention was to be in good enough shape to ride a bicycle and walk instead of run, and swim and do a triathlon on her 80th birthday. She does not have that opportunity anymore, and she is a wonderful lady. Young families in the summertime who had someplace to go to keep their families cool will no longer have that. And the Learn to Swim programs, which are essential in a state like Michigan, which is surrounded by water, will no longer be offered. There was a great deal of confusion this year, and part of it came from when the school district decided not to support these programs any longer, and it fell to the city. I feel that your city is lacking attention to recreation programs. There are only 2 full-time people working at this kind of recreation program. I don't know if you had any visibility on this. My purpose is served. You are now all informed. Thank you.
Well, thank you for informing us, Mr. Houston.
Yes.
Hi, I'm Alex Morford. I'm a Royal Oak resident, homeowner, and voter. I'm here tonight to voice my support for item 9 on the agenda, the rezoning of a lot at 13 Mile and Prairie to multiple family residential. When I first moved out and got a full-time job, what I needed was a place to rent near work, and I'm so glad that I was able to find something. This lot is a 5 to 10 minute walk, without crossing main roads, to the Corwell Hospital, which according to their website has more than 7,000 employees, including over 400 resident physicians. We should all want to develop housing near our job centers, like this hospital, so we can attract the best medical professionals to our community, which in itself is a huge community benefit. This can even help attract people who can't or don't want to drive due to how close it is. I actually did the walk, and it's just about as pleasant as you can get walking to the hospital. And then when I walked to the lot, I also noticed that there is a lot of vacant commercial property in the area. Just between the hospital and this lot on the south side of 13 Mile, I saw multiple vacant lots. So I'm not sure how the petitioner could use it for a permitted use, given that there's already so much vacancy in the area. And then, so in conclusion, I just wanted to voice my support for this rezoning. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, yes, on the aisle in the green jacket.
Hi, my name is Nancy Sumner, and I live at 1502 Northwood Boulevard. And I just wanted to say thank you for listening to me, Holly, about the speed humps on Northwood Boulevard. They put speed humps going west on Northwood that didn't do anything, didn't slow down traffic at all. They then went and put the speed humps on going east on Northwood Boulevard, and they made them the way they should be because they actually slow down the traffic. And the people that normally speed are people that don't live on Northwood Boulevard. It's cut through traffic. So I'm just hoping that you guys are gonna, that the west side of Northwood Boulevard, going west, is going to be repaired with the proper size speed humps. Thank you.
Who's next?
Good evening, everybody. My name is Michael Fitzpatrick. I live at 4715 Leafdale, Royal Oak. And I'm also here with Bob about the public swimming. We just heard it just kind of abruptly stopped. And we just want to bring it to your attention that a lot of people enjoy this adult swimming in the evening. We don't know how much you're aware of it, but for it to just stop and to discontinue, it's really kind of a sad thing. So we're just wondering to bring your attention, and do you have any plans to continue it in the future, or just to let you know that a lot of people enjoy it? So we kind of represent a lot of people that swim there. So just to bring your attention. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fitzpatrick. Okay, yes.
Good evening. My name is Philip Bader. I'm a homeowner resident along with my lovely wife Destiny, recent married couple on 3367 Prairie Avenue. Standing here tonight with my neighbors and community in opposition to item 9 on the agenda about the rezoning of parcel lot 2507103041. Have been a member of Prairie for a number of years now. Purchased the house from my parents who were there for the last decade, and we can attest to just how much of an increase in car traffic and congestion and disruption the multifamily rezoning will cause to the neighborhood. There's already so much activity occurring. We love the business of Ito Sushi. Often on weekends, they're so popular and successful that they've moved all of their parking over to the lot, which is where this project would go up. On weekends, busy nights, especially in the summer, the congestion and the traffic on the road would just become unbearable. It's already felt like a safety risk, especially as we start to consider, children, and we have a little dog as well. It does not feel like the right move to be putting this big structure there, congesting and cramming up what is now a mostly quiet, easygoing residential street. Thank you so much.
Yes.
Hello, and thank you so much for your time. I just want to add to my husband, as a young family who is looking to have children ourselves, we regularly are grateful that there are parking spots across the street for our wonderful, very busy complex next to us. We have a small business that went in recently that's a chiropractic firm. So they have people in the parking lots all the time that are full. That overlaps with Ito Sushi's business time that they're open. In the evening, like he said, they have live music. It's a wonderful asset to our community. People love it. There's almost no parking available in that area. We're on the corner. We're actually on the alley that would be looking out onto the structure. And I went out there and I counted the 24 spaces that are currently poured for parking. That doesn't even cut how many parking spaces they would need to provide to these people with that many dwelling spaces. So unless they're going to be digging underground, which is already an eyesore, a noise issue that we've had to endure after the pipe field that she just mentioned, we're right there. We look at the pipe field every morning, and it is an eyesore. When we're hoping to have children, we're always worried about running into the street. There are people that pull into our driveway constantly to turn around just alone from Ito Sushi. There are people who illegally park in front of our house. There's not enough room to park on both sides. Parking is only allowed on one side of our street. People regularly cram on the wrong illegal side of our street in front of our home. Now trying to fit in 10 units, let's say 2 cars per unit, there's absolutely nowhere to put these cars. They're going to start inconveniencing local neighbors and endangering our children and pets, and honestly lower our property values. At this point, I'm already stressed out about maybe selling our home to get a larger home for our family with the pipe field that was built next door. Now you're going to add a new build eyesore with absolutely no parking, a lot of construction noise. If we intend to sell our house next year, I have to explain to buyers that this very ugly structure that is very, very loud, that is going to take time to build, is going to take away from our ability to set our family up for success in the future. So I just ask that you think about our young families, that you think about the families across the street that already have children, that I'm always worried about and looking out for because it's such a busy street. I hope that you consider the children and the families that we hope to start and grow in that neighborhood. Thank you so much.
Excuse me, Mayor Pro Tem, if you don't mind, can I just ask where this pipe field is?
Yes, it's just beside Ito Sushi. My address is 3367 Prairie Avenue on the corner of Prairie Avenue and Greenfield, or 13 Mile next to Greenfield.
Okay.
Yeah.
There's a picture in the packet, too.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you very much.
All right, anyone next? You. In the blue shirt?
It's right there. No.
Good evening. My name is Penny Hood, and I live at 3358 Prairie. Thank you. I'm here to discuss the structure that they want to build at the corner of 13 Mile and Prairie. My whole question is that they want to put in 10 units with no sewer upgrade at the moment. I've lived there for 40 years, and I've never seen the sewers done in that time frame. I have a letter that I asked your Department of Engineering to send me in regards to when any kind of work was done on 13 Mile between Woodward and Greenfield. The last time was from 1997 to 1998, which was 26 years ago. All they did at that point was they resurfaced the road. It says no sewer, no main sewer work was done at that time of that project. I also have a letter that I went through your notes from the petitioner saying that there's things that would like to be added to the structure, like maybe wind turbines or solar panels added to the roof. We would request that you show us the new plans that they're proposing to do. That way we can see if it's, and if it would be aesthetically pleasing to having, things on the roof that are, that sort of thing. We need to figure out also the water that's coming down from, we've had some terrible storms, the water running down my street. I now have 11,548 square feet of green space that takes a lot of that water away from my street, which is a good thing. You put up a building, now I have, a concrete building there that, where's the water gonna go? Are you gonna do a catch basin for that rainwater? Or how are we gonna solve that situation? I hope that the council considers all this, and I thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. All right, in the blue shirt.
Good evening. Hope everyone's doing well. I don't want to take too much time. My name's Fred Rose, 3362 Prairie, and I'm going to read an email that my wife wrote 20 minutes ago. To the distinguished commission members, I am a 20-year resident at Royal Oak. I'm writing in opposition of the variance request for the property development at Prairie and 13 Mile Road. This piece of land is too small for the intended use. It is zoned for neighborhood business. At the planning committee meeting, the mayor mentioned that his neighbors enjoy the neighborhood businesses at the end of their street. We would like the same thing to be afforded to us as residents at our spot. No one has proven that the current green space cannot sustain a thriving neighborhood business like the other business across Prairie on 13 Mile Road. We're not asking for a variance. We are just asking for the existing ordinance to be upheld. At the very least, if still allowed despite the neighbor's objection, the apartment building should not be higher than 2 stories to conform to the height of other apartment buildings on 13 Mile Road. Thank you for your consideration. That's my wife. What I'll say is we have a really nice block, and we have a lot of people that are concerned about a possible piece of property that's going in. I do understand that businesses have to do, there'd be building and more taxes to be had and all of that. But I would say to consider just some small things, like in the plans for the building that would go up, it would only be 29 inches between that apartment building and the insurance place or the pet grooming store next door. I mean, it's so packed in there. I would just ask that we consider, if we're going to have plans, to make sure that it's not something that 2-3 years after it's built, people are wondering why it was built. There are plenty of apartments for rent in Royal Oak on that walk from our place to Beaumont. So I understand that the property is purchased, plans are made, but I also think that we should really consider what we're doing with those plans. So thank you so much for your time, and happy holidays.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay. Yes.
Hi, my name is Eric Olson. I live at 3366 Prairie Avenue. I'm also here to talk about item number 9. And I want to talk about it from a structural engineering perspective. I'm a registered structural engineer in the state of Michigan. And I want to say that I've looked at this design, and I don't think it's safe at its current location. Putting this apartment building at that location requires rezoning, and then with that rezoning, they're immediately violating the easements that are required by code. Those easements are there for safety. When you look at this design, there are structural columns, and there are primary structural framing members that are now going to be right next to a very busy street. A busy street that sees lots of traffic and dangerous traffic around the time of the Woodward Dream Cruise. So I want this council to consider the safety of that. Having primary structural framing, violating easements too close to the road on a road that has people driving dangerously is a recipe for disaster. I also want to say that electric vehicles are gaining in popularity, and this building requires those vehicles to park underneath, again, these primary structural members, any of which, I've counted 5, any of which, if they fail, that building will collapse, and it'll fall onto Prairie Avenue. So I want to bring these concerns up because as a structural engineer, my primary responsibility is to the safety of the public. And I think that the design of this building is ignoring the safety of the public. It's trying to get as many residents into as little square feet as possible. So I want that to be considered by this council. And I also want to bring up just that I live directly south of this, and I have little girls that play outside in their bathing suits in the summer. And this building gets rid of any bit of privacy that we might have had. We're going to now have, I think I counted 4 balconies with direct eye shot views into our backyard where they're playing all summer long. And now instead of having sunlight and a green space, now we have this big black building, 3 stories tall, unprecedented on this street and in this area to stare at instead of the blue sky. And what are they going to be looking at? They're going to be looking down in our backyard, watching our kids play. I don't think that's the view that they want. I don't think that's the view that we want. So I'd ask you to listen to the other residents and their concerns as well as mine. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, yes.
Hi, I'm Alex Wallen. I also live at 3359 Prairie Ave, the same corner that all these residents are just speaking about. I also want to add my voice to the opposition of the building that they are proposing to put on this parcel of land. I want to also add, there's just so many there's so many like 8 housing units that they're going to put there. It's the equivalent of 8 houses that are living on our street. So it's going to add a lot of parking traffic. And I also have to agree with the sewer, redoing the sewer lines as well. Like, it's going to disrupt our community. And at the very least, like, you could at least compromise and listen to our opposition and listen to us and come up with a compromise that would benefit everybody in the community. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Anyone else would like to speak tonight? Yes.
Hi, my name is Amy Hurley. I live at 525 West 4th Street. And I'm actually going to talk about number 7. I believe this is going to address the approval of the November 2024 traffic resolutions. We came in on December 5th to talk about an agenda item regarding the meters that are in front of our apartment building between South Laurel and West on 4th Street. And I wrote in, and Holly Donahue did a great job summarizing an issue that we have. I've been a resident there for 12 years. Other people have been there for 15 or 20 years. And just this past July, we started getting parking tickets for parking on 4th Street, which seems obvious that you would get a parking ticket for parking at a meter and not paying the meter, but it had never been the case before. You probably have that all in your notes. But they're going to be, they said, well, we can have those removed because no one's parking at these meters. We use them for our parking because there's nowhere else to park there on 4th Street because that's our residential parking because it's in a residential area. It just happens to be that our apartment building is on that corner, and we're the only place at 4th and South Laurel that doesn't have our own residential parking in this residential area. So that's where we always used to park. So it's caused a domino effect. So now we're taking up other people's parking if we park farther down 4th Street, and it's just caused some confusion also because on the sign it says you can't park here during a certain time, and on the meters it conflicts with the signs that you can't park in a certain time. So it's even more confusing. So we just asked for some kind of resolution to happen, and they said, well, actually we can remove the meters if no one's using them, because during the day no one's using them, and actually at night no one uses them because as Royal Oak has grown so much, there are parking structures everywhere. So everybody who goes downtown, they use the parking structures anyway, so no one's using them in our little section, so we're asking for them to be removed. So that would help us out greatly with our residential parking, and that's it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else like to speak this evening? Going once, twice? Okay. So we will pull the meeting back to this side of the table. Next is item number 6, the consent agenda. Would anyone like to pull anything off of the consent agenda? Nope. Oh,
I'll move approval of the consent agenda.
okay. Commissioner Douglas moves approval. Commissioner Macy, second. Any discussion? Commissioner Acolo.
Thank you, Madam Mayor Pro Tem. I noticed that the appointments committee met, the December, November appointments committee meeting's a hard one. There's a lot of appointments to make. So I want to thank the committee members that did that, and then thank all the volunteers who stepped forward. There's 2 pages full of names of residents who want to come out, spend their nights away from families, friends, etc., to do the city work of the city. So I just want to thank everyone on that list.
Thank you, Commissioner Colo. It takes a lot to volunteer in the city. There's a lot of time away from family, a lot of time away from other commitments. So we truly do appreciate the work that our volunteers do. All right, any other discussion? All right, ready for the vote? On the consent agenda, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right. So now we get to move down to item number 7, which is the approval of November 2024 Traffic Committee resolutions. And I see Ms. Holly. Thank you. So take it away.
Mayor Pro Tem and City Commissioners. Tonight I have 5 proposed resolutions for you from the November 27th traffic meeting. I might go a little out of order tonight if that's okay with you. Our second item is maybe a little bit more lengthy and might have more discussion. So I thought I would summarize the first item and then the remaining 3 items that are pretty straightforward, see if there's any questions on those, and then we can get into that second bigger item. So the first recommendation that we had was a request from the City of Madison Heights to install digital feedback signs on Campbell Road. This is in the vicinity of Bishop Foley High School and also at Lessinger Elementary. These signs would maintain the same speed limit on Campbell of 35 miles per hour, and the city's hope is to enforce safer speeds near the schools. Madison Heights is installing these types of signs at their other schools in the city, but Royal Oak does have jurisdiction of the west side of Campbell Road. So they're just asking for permission to install these 2 signs. There's a picture of them up here, these ones that kind of they blink at you if you are exceeding the speed limit there. The committee was in favor of this request. Madison Heights would be responsible for any maintenance or replacement of these if any damage occurs in the future. And so the committee is recommending approval of this item. I will skip 6B for the moment and move on to item 6C. This is a request to clarify the lane assignments for northbound Main Street at the intersection of Gardenia and Rochester. We'd like to provide some clarity and also help with traffic progression at that intersection. And so the committee is recommending that we install 2 of these signs that are shown here. And so the idea is, if you're in the left turn lane, obviously you're turning onto Catalpa. It's the 2 through lanes that seem to confuse people. And so the leftmost lane would be a through lane to Main Street. The other through lane would take you to Main Street or to Rochester. And then the far right lane lets you go to Rochester or to turn onto Gardenia. So the idea, and we would also have dashed pavement markings across the intersection. So if you're in a lane, you have some guidance to know where you're allowed to go and where you shouldn't be crossing. So we've heard a lot of chatter about that on social media, so we thought we would just address this and bring it to the committee. Our next item, which was discussed at public comment, this is a request to move the old style parking meters on 4th Street between Laurel and West. There are currently metered parking lanes on both sides of the street here, but there's also signage that indicates it's a permit parking zone, but only from 8 p.m. to 9 a.m., so overnight. Currently, residents of the building can park at the meters overnight with their parking permits, but it's still considered metered parking during the day, and so they have been getting tickets more recently compared to in the past when they really weren't being ticketed. The permit parking for this block, as well as other parts of 3rd Street in the area, kind of where you see all the yellow lines on the screen here, that was approved back in 1994, and that was really just to help out with congestion and noise complaints related to the music theater that's there and then the former Metropolitan Music Cafe. Since then, the Lafayette parking deck was constructed in the early 2000s. And having just the occurrence of parking meters and also overnight permit parking with conflicting times is somewhat confusing. I would agree with that. The police department noted that these meters are really not being used during the daytime hours or really at all. So they did not have any objections to their removal. And so the committee is recommending that we move forward with removing the old style parking meters, but keeping that permit parking time limit in place for overnight parking. And then the last item that we had here was just a request to install some ADA ramps. This is at the intersection of Orchard View and North Washington. Currently, if you wanted to cross over Orchard View and head down Washington, you'd have to walk across somebody's driveway, which are not the safest areas, and there are some bumps there. And so we had a request to actually install some ramps here. We are able to fit them along the west side of the road here. There's a tree somewhat nearby, but we can squeeze them in kind of where the pink paint marks are shown in these images here. So the traffic committee was in favor of this item as well and is recommending approval of that one. So I'll pause here and see if there's any questions on those items before going on to the 6B item.
Just a question about the last one. You referenced the tree. The tree stays, is that
Yes,
right?
the tree
Okay.
stays.
All right. Any other questions for Ms. Holly? Commissioner Pilla?
There's one towards Commissioner Macy.
Oh, I'm sorry. Commissioner Macy, she was hiding it there.
So this is about the lane markings at the Campbell, the Main and Catawba Los Gardenia. So yes, it's confusing. I think this is a great idea, but it's also confusing because there's like 4 different names coming in there, and I wonder, is this what it will say? Like, does Maine Rochester? Is it clear that it's Maine and or Rochester? You see what I'm saying? Like, Rochester Gardenia is sort of like, I live right there, so I know what it means, but I just wonder if it's confusing.
Well, I think no matter what we do here, it might be confusing. The fact that there's the 2 arrows and then the 2 words is hopefully going to give some people some guidance of what to do there, because right now I think people just wing it and hope for the best as they get across the intersection. One thing we could maybe do is take out the left turn lane Catalpa only, because that should be pretty darn obvious to anybody there. We left it just so it was really clear what was going on with all the lanes in that direction, but I guess I'm not sure how else I would clarify that unless I said you can only use this lane to go to Rochester, and that's not what we want to do, because we want traffic to fill those lanes and move through that intersection and not stack in one lane.
Okay, I'm just trying to think of other places that I've seen this where there's a kind of a split like this and they have the lane markings. It feels like they don't just say the names of the roads, but I could be.
I know like we have some on, I want to say, is it Coolidge up by 14 Mile maybe? And also Coolidge as you head out towards Woodward, I think we have signs somewhat similar to this that kind of give you the names of the streets and then the arrows that tell you what lanes to be in. I don't know if they split lanes though, like this one's a little bit different.
Yeah, I guess my main concern is Maine Rochester. Like, you could read that as like the Maine Rochester Road. You know what I mean? Like, it's not clear to me that from looking at this what's trying to be done, except the fact that I already know. It's like, you understand what I'm saying, right? That
kind of, but I don't know. I guess, do you have a suggestion? I'm not sure how to change it.
And, like, Maine or Rochester or Gardenia. I don't know. It feels like someone new to the city would read this and be like, what?
Street.
Yeah. Main Street, Rochester Street.
We could. I could look into adding that. It's really hard because, right, this sign is like, I think 5 feet wide when you print it. So that's like a lot of text to fit and have it legible for a driver. So I get a little nervous about adding more to it. But maybe if you did Maine and then a second line or, and then Rochester below that.
Maybe an ampersand?
Perhaps.
I don't know. If you think I'm crazy, like I'm not passionate about this, but it just feels weird to me and I wanted to bring it forth.
How about I ask a few of our consultants if they have other thoughts on this, and if maybe there's a little bit more straightforward guidance, I can tweak the sign as long as you're okay with the general concept.
Yes.
Does that work?
Yes,
okay.
thank you.
Any other questions for Ms. Holly? Commissioner Pilla?
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Ms. Holly, actually, now that Commissioner Macy brings up the sign, I wonder, should the street markings also change to reflect the arrows that you're painting on the sign, so that someone doesn't look at the road, look at the sign, and that might create some confusion?
Yes, I can ask DPS if they can add that. I remember when we did this section of Main Street, that was the question, and like there wasn't like a template for the Main Rochester, the weird arrow, like you almost had to make your own template for it, but I'm sure DPS is up to the challenge of doing that.
They're extremely creative and really good at what they do.
And I'm sorry, Ms. Donahue. Any other questions for Ms. Donahue? Okay.
Okay.
So,
Oh, go ahead.
no, go ahead. I wasn't sure if we're going to make a motion on those for now or.
It's up to you if you'd like to pause and do that, or we can just move on.
Let's move on and then we can.
All right, so item 6B, like I mentioned, is a little bit more involved. Zoom in here a little bit. Okay, so this was a staff presentation for potential pedestrian crossing islands on Catalpa Drive. This is from Woodward to Main Street, and we're planning to finally resurface this road in 2026. And we want to make sure that we understand the project goals and what we're going after here before we get into the thick of design this spring. We evaluated the crash history on the road, the traffic volume and the speeds, and I'll kind of get into those details. But we also wanted to look at improving pedestrian movements along the road, just knowing that there's limited places to cross right now. And it's a pretty popular corridor for pedestrians, especially we know a lot of students are crossing there to go to and from ROMs. So with that in mind, staff is recommending that we install some amount of islands or pedestrian bump outs to help shorten the crossing distance for pedestrians across the road. These can help slow down traffic a little bit. Based on our past studies, we don't expect these are going to have a huge impact on speeds on the road, but perhaps 1 to 3 miles per hour lower speeds could be a result of this as we kind of narrow the lanes that go around these islands. So I'll kind of briefly go over the locations we were thinking about doing, and I do have zoomed in views of these if we want to get into any details here. But so starting, just to familiarize you with where we're at, Woodward is at the top left here, and then we head east. The bottom panel matches right around the railroad crossing, and then that heads all the way over to Main Street on the bottom right. Anywhere there's traffic signal, little icons, that's where a traffic signal is on the corridor, and those do have pedestrian crossings with the blinking crossing signals. From our master plan that's currently in draft form, they are recommending improved crossings at Farnham and Iroquois, so that's the first one here, kind of closer to Woodward, and also an improved crossing at Marywood, which I kind of have shown here. We have more like green infrastructure and bump outs proposed at that location. So I would say those two are maybe a little bit more high priority from the staff perspective. Other locations that we put in here, part of it is just finding a spot that fits where you're not blocking somebody's driveway or turning movements from the side streets, and also trying to make sure that they're somewhat strategically placed so that you don't have to walk a really long distance just to be able to cross Catalpa safely. So after the Farnham location, the next one that we are proposing is just to the west of Fernwood. This is another pedestrian island just in the middle of the road. So you cross a lane, you can pause if you need to, and then cross the remaining lane to cross the street. There's already a traffic signal at Hilldale, and then we get to the railroad crossing, the viaduct. This is Maxwell here. We did not put islands here just because we have some sight distance issues and also a pretty steep hill going under that viaduct there. So I was a little concerned trying to fit something in there. But we do have Meininger Park down here, so it's something we could look at playing with during design, but I didn't throw anything on this plan. The next island we're looking at is at Pleasant Street. Again, this is just a nice one that fits and is still kind of close to that Maple and Maxwell area. Marywood is a pretty common crossing point for students going to the middle school. This one's a nice location because it's actually a low point on the road, so we can turn that into rain gardens and kind of have a double benefit there, crossing as well as rain gardens. We also have one at Lafayette, which I know is just 1 block over, but again, this is a pretty popular area to cross the street, and students are going to cross where they're going to cross. They're probably not going to walk over to Washington to use the signal unless their mom is with them and making them do it. So we figured, it doesn't hurt to have a little bit more in that area, just for emphasis there. In terms of costs, we already knew we were going to be doing something on this job, so we did budget more money when we planned out the project. Each of these median islands is about $15,000 rough cost. And then the bump outs here at Marywood, those are a little bit more, those are estimated at $42,000 because it is rain gardens and piping and all that sort of stuff there. So that's kind of the concept. We can get into those details in a minute. I did want to go over the traffic data with you as well. So we found not too surprisingly, that we had some higher speeds on this corridor. Our 85th percentile speed, which is usually what we look at to set a speed limit, was measured at 32 miles per hour and 31 miles per hour. So that's kind of an indication that perhaps this should be a 30-mile-per-hour street. We also have the 50th percentile speed shown here, which are higher than 25 miles per hour, and that's part of the Michigan law that says if you are setting a speed limit, you can go under the 85th percentile speed, but you should not, or you shall not, set it below the 50th percentile speed. So I did want to present that information. Commercial traffic is not too high on this street, and volume of traffic is around 6,000 vehicles per day here. So we did bring this to the traffic committee with the recommendation to change the speed limit on this road to be 30 miles per hour. We had, I think, 11 people attended the meeting. Most were pretty happy or in favor of doing the pedestrian improvements, but I believe every single one was adamantly opposed to changing the speed limit on this road. Ultimately, the traffic committee is recommending that we first do a project, see if maybe these islands can help reduce speeds a little bit and change the numbers out there, and then reevaluate this after that construction is completed. So more like 2027, we'd be looking at this road again to see if it makes any sense to change things out there. So the resolution for this item, I purposely left a little bit vague, just knowing that we're going to have some design or cost constraints that may prevent me from putting in a very specific location on here. So I didn't want to have a direction that said you must put islands at these so many locations. But really the purpose of bringing this item forward was first to give the neighborhood a chance to speak on the issue. So they did come to the traffic meeting and give their comments. And then also just to see if the commission felt very strongly like we do not want something at this location, or we really want you to look at a certain crossing location that maybe we didn't consider here. The traffic committee was in favor of that somewhat vague resolution with a 6-1 vote on this item.
Does anyone have any questions for Ms. Donahue? Ms. Commissioner Fuller?
Thank you, ma'am. So I'll say I appreciate your focus on student safety when you were drawing some of these, especially with those crossings for the students at to the middle school. I watched my little girl just run across the street today without any care about where she was crossing, and she's 6. So I can't imagine how much more careless she gets as time goes on here. So thank you for that, and just in general for thinking about this road. I do agree with the traffic committee. I would personally rather us see try to attempt ways to lower the speed limit first. And I know we're constrained, right? This is a straight road that's pretty narrow. You can't really add too many chicanes, I would assume. There's not many different traffic designs that we could throw into this that would potentially slow it down, right?
Well, I mean, we do have 2 parking lanes on this road, so there's room to do these things. It does take away on-street parking. And again, the concern for me is like, is it effective? We studied this, a few months ago, and it hasn't been as effective as we wanted it to be when these traffic calming improvements. They've been great for pedestrian crossing and pedestrian safety, but we really don't seem to be changing driver behavior as much as we had hoped. So I'm not saying it's hopeless, but I'm taking a little bit more of a cautious approach when it comes to investing so much funding into something that may not benefit the traffic speeds.
So when I was looking at this too, I wondered if there's maybe potential to, like we did on Lincoln Avenue, install those temporary barricades, something that doesn't cost a lot of money to put in potential diverters to see if a design could possibly work. So maybe over the next year, as you're thinking about this road again and ways to design it for potential use, that might be something to bring back.
Commissioner Macy.
I think this looks great, and I also appreciate your being really thoughtful about the ways that the students are going to be crossing. I think you're smart to have it with Marywood and Lafayette, and then again at Pleasant. I do remember that we had someone come to traffic committee like 3 or 4 years ago proposing. Do you remember which street they were proposing?
It was either Edgewood or Marywood, and we did install ramps. So if I zoom way in here, you can kind of see we have existing crosswalks. Sorry, it's so blurry. It's low quality image here, but I think it was Edgewood, if I remember right. So we did install ramps and had said, when we actually get around to doing this road, we'll take a closer look at doing something a little more robust. At that time, we just wanted to give a safe, or I would say accessible crossing point. So this kind of improves upon what we started a few years ago.
So these look like the right spots to me, well reasoned. I wonder if we should ask the schools if they have a thought about which, like, if they know the student traffic walking patterns. I do know that sometimes kids are walking to Northwood from there, and I don't know exactly what path they would use. So I think this is great, but I just wonder if the schools might have a thought if we want.
Yeah, and I can certainly reach out to them. I know we did reach out when we talked, like I said, I think it was Edgewood, and they said, anything you do is great. Sounds good. They didn't really have a strong opinion on any particular location, but I'll certainly reach out to them as well and make sure they don't have any other input.
Yeah, I think it looks great. Thank you.
Commissioner Herzog.
I have a question regarding the crashes and the turn. Where do those normally occur? I mean, it doesn't really, do you have an idea of?
Yeah, I don't have my breakdown of all the crashes in front of me here, but, oh gosh, I don't even have my total number in front of me. I do know when we looked at them, I want to say it was like 30 or something in a 3-year period, which I realize sounds high, but remember this is a mile-long stretch. Yeah. And looked, are there any trends? Is there one intersection where people keep getting in accidents or something? And there wasn't. There was like a handful kind of sprinkled all over. There was a few random rear ends, a lot of hitting parked cars, as we know happens on these half-mile roads. But no strong trends that indicated, wow, we really have to focus on a safety issue here.
I used to live on Maple, and so this is not Commissioner Herzog's experience, but the viaduct at Maxwell and Catalpa, it's really hard to see through that viaduct to see that oncoming traffic, and I was just wondering if there's something that you can, like a mirror or something that you can see the traffic. I don't know if that's...
Yeah. So we did have, I think, 2 people came in, even though it really wasn't part of the specific discussion, they did bring that up, that they had concerns about that. We studied it at the traffic committee in 2022 at that time, just to see what's the sight distance here that's available. So the sight distance is adequate, but there is a blind spot as people cross under the viaduct. So you have to kind of be a safe driver and wait to make sure nobody's hiding in there, right? But you can see what's coming from both directions adequately. The accidents, I don't believe we had any accidents when we studied it in 2022. I just looked again today, and we had 1 accident in a 3-year period related to a left turn sight distance issue there. So the options that we considered back in 2022 is just tell people they can't turn left there, prohibit it, which is probably pretty annoying to people that live on that street. But that would solve the issue, right? Just tell them they can't do it, and all they can do is turn right. You could close it, but I don't think anyone's seriously considering that we close off the road there at Catalpa. We did talk about mirrors. We had some pretty strong concerns that they can be misleading. The objects show up a little bit smaller than they actually are. They can be confusing to new drivers, and they require a fair amount of maintenance. So at that time, the committee had said we don't really want to move forward with mirrors. There's not a strong accident history here, but it is uncomfortable. And so we made no changes at that time. I still feel like that was appropriate because I'm not seeing a trend of accident history there, but I do agree that it's a little uncomfortable.
And I think that's also a place where people cross a lot too, to get into the park there. I don't know.
Yeah, I may, as we get our numbers back from the survey and actually see like how steep the grade is there, because you have to consider sight distance, not just laterally, but up and down. If a car is going down a hill, can they see somebody up at the top of the hill coming back up? So once we have like that more detailed information, we can see if we could fit something that's maybe a little bit closer to Meininger Park. I know I can't do anything right there at Maxwell. It's just, it's too hard, and there's too many driveways in the way to even fit like an island or something. But possibly like closer to Maple, or I think it's Woodcrest is the other street to the west of Maxwell. We could look at maybe squeezing another island in there.
Great, thank you.
Commissioner Teasdale. Thank you. Ms. Donahue and I had also chatted this morning a little bit about Maxwell, so I thought I would just bring that up here since we're chatting about it anyway. So my daughter goes to Northwood, and we have biked from our house on Lincoln to Northwood a couple times, and Maxwell really was the best route to go across there. As you travel up north, when you get to, I guess, it intersects with 12 Mile
I have to tell you, that 12-mile crooks thing turns my brain around inside out sometimes, but the crossing guard is right there at the top to get you to the school. So it's really a nice route to get there, but navigating the traffic and the viaduct, you know, as a 7-year-old and a mom is complicated. And so I definitely understand the limitations around that would prevent an island or something like that. But I do wonder if we might want to consider at some point striping or something like that to make sure drivers are aware that there are pedestrians crossing, and it is actually 2 different places because you have to kind of go around the viaduct. So I just wonder about that to make sure that there's more attention to people crossing, because the park is there as well. So it's not just the school, but the park as well. So I appreciate your bringing it up today and the conversation and your consideration of that. Thanks.
Does anyone else have any questions for Ms. Donahue? So we have 5 items before us. How do you want to tackle these? You want to go one by one, or Commissioner Colo?
Thank you, Madam Mayor Pro Tem. I'll just make a motion for all of them at this point. So I will move approval of all items as presented, with the modifications of drawing lane assignments on Main Street as discussed, and then giving the engineer leeway on the design on Catalpa.
Is there a second, Commissioner? Commissioner Douglas is a second. Discussion? All right. No discussion? All right. Well, thank you, Ms. Donahue. So we'll go for a vote. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, so all 5 have moved approval. Thank you. All right. Back to item number 8. I see Ms. Coy coming for the financial audit discussion. Thank you for being here this evening. Great. I'll let you start it off, or Mr. Okay.
Thank you. That's great. Want to use the mic?
Thank you. Try this again. All right. Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem and Commissioners. Tonight we're here to present the acceptance of the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2024 audit and annual comprehensive financial report. We have here with us tonight John Matten. He is the chair of the Audit Review Committee, and Nate Balderman. He's the principal auditor for Raymond Robson. And we have our Assistant Finance Director, Tony DeCamp, right next to me. So just an overview, the Audit Review Committee met last month on November 26th, and they reviewed the documents included in your packets tonight. We also took into account their insights and recommendations as detailed in the memo and the notes. So the items in your packet include the auditor's communication letter, the annual comprehensive financial report, also referred to as the ACFR. We have the draft meeting minutes, and then we also have the single audit compliance report. This details our federal grant activity. So I am very pleased to announce that the city has received an unmodified audit opinion. So this is also known as a clean opinion. And then additionally, there were no findings, material weaknesses, significant deficiencies, non-compliance, or misstatements. So one of the last things I would like to mention is that we did receive the GFOA Award for Excellence in Financial Reporting for the previous year's ACFR. It is our intent to submit it again for this year's report, and we do anticipate that it will meet those requirements for, I'm pleased to say, hopefully the 17th year in a row. And so with that, I would like to take a moment to thank Tony DeCamp. Again, he's our Assistant Finance Director, and he takes a lead on the audit, and he is behind a large share of our success. So I'd also like to mention Rebecca Chase. She's our Senior Accountant. And also Jane Marie Hubanks. She's our treasurer, and she contributes a significant amount of time and effort to the audit. So now that I've given you an overview of the results, I'll turn it over to Nate and John if they have anything to add, and then if anyone has any questions.
Hi, good evening. I'm John Mayton. I'm chairman of the Audit Review Committee. The great thing is in the last, I think, 25 years I've been on this committee, we've hardly ever had to come and talk about anything, which is really a good thing. The finance department always does a great job of preparing for it. Raymond Robson does a great job of preparing the presentation for us as we go through the Audit Review Committee. It's not one of the more exciting meetings that we might ever sit through, but we get through it every year. This year, the one thing we did want to note, though, that we did go through the management letter and everything, and as Kimberly mentioned, there's no misstatements or significant findings, which is great in the purposes of the audit. However, we wanted to bring one thing to the Commission's attention, is in the letter there was a comment, and this is a repeat comment, about a relatively high fund balance in the State Construction Code Fund. So the Audit Review Committee recommends that the City Commission addresses a substantial fund balance in the State Construction Code Fund by establishing a plan for long-term funding utilization and establishing quantifiable parameters to trigger remediation activities to deplete or replenish the fund as necessary. And we'd also like to get updates on this at the future meetings. This is a finding that it's a repeat finding, and in the last, about 6 years ago, there was a substantial amount in this fund, and it's doubled since then. So we want to see something moving forward that's taking action to address this. So and again, I want to thank Kimberly and her department, and Nate and his company for doing a great audit. If there's any questions, if not, I'll turn it over to Nate.
Okay, Mr. Balderman.
Okay.
Or I'm sorry, are there any questions for Mr. Matten before he leaves? Okay. Mr. Balderman.
All right. Well, thank you for your time. They've pretty much said it all. They gave my normal presentation. So, but I am here if you have any specific questions on the audit. So.
Well, first, thank you, Ms. Coy, Mr. DeCamp, to the audit team. This is a lot of work, and it's really rare, except for City of Royal Oak, to have an unmodified report. So thank you all for your work in making certain that everything was turned in and done as required. My question about the state construction issue, understanding that you want the City Commission to determine, like put in place processes in order to lower that balance. Does that mean that you're looking for ways to figure out what those funds can be used for to lower that excess?
So really, the basis of our comment is the fact that the state law regarding that fund specifically is that it's supposed to be set at zero. I mean, it's kind of one of those. It's kind of unrealistic to have any fund be exactly at that. But because of the amount of the fund balance that's in there, it really is looking. It's kind of that compliance / type of a comment that we have of making sure that you're complying. So really on a go forward basis, I think the recommendation is that it's looked at so that it can be addressed appropriately going forward.
Okay, thank you. Does anyone have any questions for anyone on this team? All right, well, thank you.
All right, thank you.
All right. So, Mr. Wollenweber, are we approving this?
You accept
design?
you will accept the audit report
Okay.
As outlined in the minutes of the draft minutes of the Audit Review Committee.
Yep. All right. So, do we have a motion? Commissioner Macy?
Move that we accept as presented.
Okay. And Commissioner Herzog, second. All right, any discussion? Commissioner Colo.
Thank you, Madam Mayor Pro Tem. I just want to thank Ms. Coy and your department. I mean, reading this report, once again, it shows how outstanding our budget is. From the 4-year look ahead to the 6-year CIP, to the responsible spending, and as we're experiencing growth in the community. So this audit really highlights how good your department does in managing the $250 million that flows through the city every year. So thank you and to the entire team for continuing up that effort.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Commissioner Polo. Any other discussion?
Yeah, Mr. Bannon and the volunteers too. Thank you for those 4-hour meetings.
All right, so we're ready for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, so that has been approved. Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you all.
Okay, so we are now moving to item number 9, which is the conditional rezoning of parcel 25-07-103-041 to multiple family residential, the first reading. All right. Good evening.
Good evening. Before you this evening is a request to conditionally rezone parcel 2507-103-041 from its current zoning of neighborhood business to multiple family residential. The petitioner is proposing the rezoning to allow a development with a 3-story building and 10 multiple family dwellings. Under the site's current neighborhood business zoning, the project would not be a permitted use in that zoning district. Although multiple family dwellings are permitted in neighborhood business zoning, they do require a commercial use on the ground level, and the building proposed by the petitioner would contain only multiple family dwellings. There would be no commercial or other use on the ground level. They are proposing a conditional rezoning, which is a special review allowed under the State Zoning Enabling Act. As that, the petitioner can offer conditions that can be imposed on the approval. Those conditions must be voluntarily offered by the petitioner, and the city cannot require them as a condition to rezoning the property. If approved tonight on first reading, the application would be back before you for second reading. At that time, we would also present a conditional zoning agreement that would need to be approved as part of that second reading. Mr. Vitale, the petitioner's architect, is in the audience this evening. I would refer any of the specifics for the project to him, but I can answer any questions on the procedure that may be necessary.
All right, thank you, Mr. Hedges. So I understand when this was before the Planning Commission, the project was either a vote up or vote down. There was no ability to request any amendments. Is that the same before this body?
That is correct. There can be some minor revisions made, but hard and fast requirements can be imposed as a condition to rezoning the property. It's, again, a part of the section of the Zoning Enabling Act they're requesting it under, the specifics of which the city attorney may be able to answer some questions about that better than I could. But we can't, trying to select my word carefully here, but we can't require conditions as a prerequisite to rezoning the property. They would have to be voluntarily offered by the petitioner.
All right, thank you. Do we have any questions for Mr. Hedges? Okay. Well, since the petitioner is here, would you like to come up and tell us some more about your project?
Thank you. I want to say congratulations on your clean audit, first of all. Thank you. My name is John Vitale, and I'm with the firm Stuckey and Vitale Architects. I'm also proud to say that our firm's been Royal Oak based firm for over 40 years, so we've enjoyed being here. Our project has worked very closely with the planning department in terms of the initial design and what we investigated what we could build on that parcel. So we looked closely at the idea of doing retail or a commercial development, and the parcel is very difficult in that regard. Our client's even gone through a market study to see if retail or commercial use would be appropriate for that site. And it seems that it really wouldn't be conducive to the size of the site, access to the site. Some of the, as someone mentioned earlier, vacancies in that area and so forth. So we thought the most and highest and best use would be all residential. And that would be the lowest intensity of that site as well. We explored the idea of putting retail on the first floor, which is allowed under the current zoning. But on the first floor, what we're planning are amenities for the residents. So really, on that first floor, there's really just the idea of a small business area that's accommodating the residents that are there, bike storage, those kinds of things. So in lieu of putting a higher density use like a retail, which would generate more traffic, even for the neighborhood, we thought just keeping the entire building residential would be the most appropriate approach. And that's the way we've designed the building. We do accommodate all the parking we need for the building on site. We certainly will work with the engineering department to provide all the utilities and the things that are required for that site. And I'm here to answer any other questions you might have.
Are there any questions for the petitioner? Commissioner Chisholm?
I was wondering a couple things. One, I guess the first question is, could you talk about the wind turbine that's on top and the benefits of it and what it would look like, and a little bit more about that, please?
Yeah, we're really proposing a very, very low profile wind turbine. And again, these are features, again, through discussions in the planning department and planning commission, we thought that some energy features introduced into the project would be appropriate. So the wind turbine would primarily be hidden mostly by the parapet of the building, and it'll generate some electricity to be fed back into the building. We also have solar panels that we're proposing, Energy Star appliances throughout the building. So we're very energy conscious in the construction of the building.
My questions were around the energy too. Can you just dive down a little bit more on the wind turbine? I was under the impression that Southeast Michigan wasn't a great place for wind turbines, and that solar was a better solution. And with these two energy, generating energy, is it to like net zero? Are you like, how much is it going to be producing? Is it going to be?
Yeah, unfortunately, we can't achieve a net zero on the building, but we are just really adding, a way of gathering solar energy is a much better source, and cost of that has really come down more in line with a more appropriate use. The wind turbine, adds some, but they're not high energy producing devices. So that's why we haven't invested a lot in a turbine, only just as another way of getting some energy out of the project.
And just to follow up on the wind turbine, it's new to us, so we're going to have a couple of questions. The sound,
almost no sound at all. Very quiet. Turbine, again, there's some circular motion to it, but it doesn't produce any sound at all. Very, very minimal.
All right, Commissioner Chisholm, did you want to finish your comment?
Sorry, I went a little crazy over here on our side of the table. I apologize, Mayor Pro Tem. Could you review the number of parking spots that you have in this plan, please?
We have 20 parking spots, 20 are required.
Okay. And something came up in public comment about I would call them feet. You probably don't call them feet, but could you talk a little bit about that?
Structural columns.
Yeah, and could you talk a little bit about where in the property those are going to be along and how they work?
The property, actually, the building is set back to match the setbacks of the adjoining buildings. So we're not any farther or closer to the road than any of the other existing structures. They're normal building columns. Our structural engineer would design them. They're just under the building footprint. They're not beyond. So there's no safety issue in any way with these building columns.
Are they running along Prairie or 13 Mile?
They're really set back. They're just under the building. So they would run.
Could you say like northeast?
There's really 3 columns that support the building, if I recall.
Oh, okay, so it's not on one side.
And they're really directly under the building. So they're not projecting any beyond the footprint of the building.
Are they supportive or are they aesthetic?
They support the building, yes. So their foundations, they're covered, they can be protected by a bollard. We'd be happy to do that as well, but they're really nowhere near the street. It would be very difficult. I mean, it would be similar if a car went off the road, it would be just like hitting a building.
Okay. All right.
You know, so really, there's really no concern.
I think those are all my questions. Thank you.
Given that they touched on the sustainability aspects, I just want to ask you really quickly, your letter to the commission states additional consideration for energy featured, including solar panels on the building roof, wind turbines, and 2 electric car chargers. Are those definitely integrated into your project, or are you still just considering those?
They are definitely integrated into
Okay.
our project.
All right. So you do plan on having the 2 electric car chargers?
We do, yes.
Okay. Did I see a hand down here, Commissioner Fuller?
Thank you. Actually, I have 2 questions to ask. We're talking about energy on this side of the table.
Sure.
Back to that turbine, if it doesn't produce a lot of energy, does it just make sense to replace that turbine with another solar panel?
We could. We'd be happy to do that.
I guess
mean,
what's the energy offset?
It's another feature in terms of producing energy, and we could evaluate that. And if it makes more sense to do all solar panels, we'd be open to that.
Yeah, because I mean, while we appreciate I think the look towards environmentalism, you know, we don't have to be performative about it, right? Like we could do it just because it's a higher and best use of the item. Especially if it may alleviate some of the tension in the neighborhood, not to have that.
Yeah, if that's something not preferred, we're absolutely fine with that.
I think that sounds like an easy one right there.
Yeah.
And then with the EV chargers, we don't have any specs on those. Are these level 1? What type of EV chargers do you plan on installing?
You know, we haven't specified any particular charger yet. You mean a specific type of charger?
The level, like a level 1 or level 2, a fast charger, slow charger.
You know, I'm not sure yet.
Okay.
Probably a level 1, I think.
Okay.
Because people would be parked there overnight, so I think we don't need any fast chargers.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions for the petitioner? Oh, I'm sorry.
Thank you. During public comment, there was some discussion around stormwater. Can you talk a little bit about how this design incorporates stormwater management?
Yeah, so the entire site, we haven't gone through engineering yet, but we certainly will comply with all the engineering required for stormwater. We're capturing all the water. The roof water will be captured on the building itself. We'll probably, if we need to oversize pipes, we plan to put those underground in the parking lot and contain and detain stormwater if we need to. So we'll work with the engineering department to, you know, accommodate them on how they would like to do it.
Any other questions? Is there any consideration to making any of the units affordable or veterans housing?
You know, we were thinking, I guess we talked a little bit about that with our client, and what they are willing to do is make some of the units, I think, special pricing for residents or nurses that work at Corwell. So they are going to create some sort of program that'll create affordable type housing for residents or nurses that are working at the hospital.
Is there any idea how they would do that? Would they be working with like the state or the county?
I think they're planning on working with the hospital system itself and understand what level that needs to be. And there's some discussion about doing that. Now, I don't know the details of how they'll formulate that, but they are willing to do that and commit to doing that.
Okay. All right. Any other questions? All right. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
We'll bring the discussion back to this side of the table.
Thank you.
All right. Commissioner
Douglas.
Thank you. Mr. Hedges, I just want to make sure I think I understand this correctly, but the petition requirements or the petition criteria that you offer here tell us that this project does not, the level of opposition does not rise to the level that we need a supermajority, that is, we can approve this conditional rezoning with a simple majority?
That's correct. Under state law and the city's zoning ordinance does have a provision for petitions in protesting a rezoning that would require a supermajority vote. It requires 20% of the land area that is within 100%. It requires the owners of that 20% of the property within that area to equal 20%. We ran the numbers and it comes to the petition that was submitted to the Planning Commission. It equals about 15.37%. So it does not require a 5 votes. It can be passed in a simple 4-3 majority.
Okay, good, thank you. That's what I understood. And I'm going to reiterate something Mr. Hedges said here. The difference between multifamily zoning and neighborhood business zoning. Our current zoning ordinance, our outdated zoning ordinance, establishes some very deep setbacks for multifamily, 25-foot setbacks, and it by definition creates apartments that are of a size that are not desirable in today's market. At the same time, neighborhood business zoning does not have deep setbacks. You can build basically lot line to lot line with neighborhood business zoning. And the only thing that differs is that the neighborhood business zoning requires a business on the ground floor, and the upper 2 floors can be residential, can be multifamily. So there are many other activities that could go into this site that would be far less desirable, as the architect pointed out, than residential. Residential is really a very low level use for this site. But the fact is, the only difference is that they're not putting a store on the ground floor, and in some ways having a store on the ground floor might have made this, created higher traffic and made this even less desirable to the neighbors. So that's, as a planning commissioner, that is one of the reasons why I supported this project when it came before the Planning Commission, and support it now.
Any other comments? Commissioner Kola.
Thank you. And actually, I have a couple questions for Mr. Hedges based kind of on what Commissioner Douglas said. Can you talk about the current zoning and what would be allowed setback-wise?
Setbacks in the neighborhood business zoning district for this property, there would only be 2 that would be required. Would be the east side yard setback from Prairie Avenue, and then the south rear yard setback from the public alley. In both of those cases, it would be a 25-foot setback that's required. For the west side, excuse me, I may have said east side, but the west side yard setback from Prairie, it would be 25 feet from the lot line. The rear yard setback, it would be 25 feet from the center line of the public alley. And in both cases, the proposed building would meet both of those setbacks for neighborhood business zoning.
So if this building had a different use as it's presented, it would be approved administratively because it has the right setbacks?
Depending on the use, it would probably still require some form of approval by the Planning Commission.
Okay.
Perhaps just a simple site plan review,
Sure.
or perhaps a special land use permit review. But again, as long as it was a use allowed in that zoning district, it would not have to come before the City Commission.
Okay. And then Commissioner Douglas alluded to the draft master plan. What is the future? It is a draft plan right now, but we've not heard a lot about this particular section of the city. What is the future vision of this piece of land?
I believe in the most recent draft version we have, that the future land use map for this portion of the West 13 Mile Road corridor has it designated as what's termed a neighborhood node. That would, as it's described in the draft master plan, recommend more types of residential uses being allowed within that than are currently allowed under neighborhood business zoning.
And then we heard about parking tonight, and I hear, you know, the petitioner say there's 20 spots for the 10 units, so that's ratio of 2 to 1. Could we also, as a commission, though, if we do approve this as kind of a compromise with the neighborhood, could we start enforcing permanent parking on Prairie so that we do not have spillover into the residential neighborhood?
I believe if the neighbors that live on Prairie Avenue wanted to establish that, I believe the method is they could contact the engineering division. I believe a request for permit parking would have to go through the traffic committee and then at some point be formally adopted by the city commission. But that is an option if the neighbors wish to pursue it, they can. I would suggest that they do so to contact the engineering division about how to begin that procedure.
So if we approve this tonight, potentially we can get permit parking on these streets that would be free to the residents that we can have in place well before this is ever constructed.
I don't believe it's something we can tie to the approval of the rezoning and site plan. But it is, if the neighbors on Prairie Avenue wish to pursue that, there is an option for them to do that.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Okay. Commissioner Douglas.
Yes, I will move approval of the conditional rezoning as submitted in the document on first reading, with the understanding that staff will bring us on second reading the final conditional rezoning agreement.
All right, we have a motion. Is there a second? Commissioner Cheatham, second. Discussion? Commissioner Kolo.
Thank you, Madam Mayor Pro Tem. Can I just clarify too that I would hope before we have the final document, we'd have specifications on the EV charging and the solar and what's happened with the turbine.
Okay. Is that an amendment to the motion, or?
What?
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, just direction to staff. Okay. Any comment?
I just want to speak to why I'm supportive of this motion. So this building, I did walk along that area. I have no idea what just happened. Okay, so I walked this property and the neighborhood a little bit. And you know, it is on 13 Mile, which is a main road. There is a bus route about a block away, which can take people to Beaumont or to Corwell, which is also just about a 5 to 10 minute walk. It can also take them down to Ascension Hospital or Oakland County Community College in Southfield. And so I think it is a really nice location to get people who may not have transportation around quite easily. As we know, we do have a housing shortage, and while there are apartments there, that also tells us that this is a nice area that there are a number of apartment buildings. I also noticed that there are a number of empty or what look like likely empty storefronts in the area, and so I like the idea of having amenities on the first floor, because I think that's also a great way for people who live in the building to get to know each other and build some community. So those are the reasons why I wanted to support this motion.
Anyone else? All right. I'll just say is that a hand? I'll just say I agree. There is a housing shortage, and I think one of the goals here is to ensure that we have adequate amount of housing, diverse housing in the city. And I appreciate the idea of having some sort of lower rate for particular individuals that are in need or work at the hospital. I just feel like there's a lot being done in this small space. It's a unique design, but I think it's a challenging site to put this type of housing on. So I'm on the fence with this one, considering there is a need for additional housing, but I just don't know that this is right at this time. So that's just my thought. Commissioner Kolo?
Thank you, Madam Mayor Pro Tem. So first, to all the neighbors come out, this is hard. I will say that I say this about 3 times a year. People came, I was part of a neighborhood where there was a development that was right in my backyard. In that case, it was a 4-story development that we didn't, I was actively opposed to. So I understand where each and every one of you are coming from.
Okay.
Day house outside.
All right, we will wait for a second to make sure that's it's finished. All right.
So when all
try
the city
again.
computers don't work tomorrow, you guys will know you're here and you saw it happen. You saw the ransom attack. Yeah. So I will say, I know where you're coming from, and I hope that we can get some compromises in there to make it a little bit better. It is on, 13 miles, a major road. It's a busy road. Yeah.
Okay, we're going to keep
yeah.
the comment on this side of the table.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. It is busy, and that is where you put stuff like this. That's where this goes. And knowing that, talking to Mr. Hedges, knowing that someone could build a building that's large to these footprints in this specification, I think housing is the best option for that. I think it helps revitalize some of the empty storefronts along there, because there are some empty storefronts. I think where is that farm sale business maybe that's right around there next to the formerly Great Chinese place. I mean, there's a lot of good stuff that could go in there. So I do think more housing helps revitalize that. But if it came to a commercial building that's this size, or new neighbors of a house this size, knowing that both could happen, I'd rather have the neighbors. So I'm going to support this, but I do encourage the residents on Prairie to contact engineering, and let's get rolling on getting permit parking, because if you're concerned about that, that's something that we could definitely do. At least I would easily vote for that to alleviate any issues you might have.
Thank you, Commissioner Colo. Commissioner Douglas.
I will say I am not inclined to move forward with permit parking before we even know what's built there. And I suspect you'll hear that from the traffic committee as well. Let's see what happens when it's built and what pressures it places on the street parking. But that's parenthetical to my main point here, which is the draft master plan proposes that housing development in Royal Oak be located along major corridors, and that it is going to be multifamily. And if you look at our major corridors and look at the land divisions on those major corridors, it is a bunch of tiny little parcels. So, and we are seeing this at the Planning Commission, and we will see it more as the city grows and as developers come in to take advantage of these opportunities, that the challenges of either acquiring adjacent sites to build larger developments or building compact multifamily on sites this size is one we're going to be revisiting over and over again in the coming years.
Commissioner Colo.
Sorry, I just want to say again, just so everyone, I want to make my point very clear. I will fight for permit parking on that road. I think it's silly to suggest otherwise. I don't know why we'd have to wait. It costs us nothing. It doesn't hurt to have permit parking. So I don't want to dash anyone's hopes on that tonight.
Okay, thank you. All right, any other discussion? Are we ready for a vote? All in favor?
Aye.
Oppose? No. All right. So this moves forward. All right. And again, thank you all for coming out this evening and sharing your thoughts and concerns. It's truly appreciated. All right, and we are on to item number 10, which is the adjournment. Is there a motion? No one wants to.
That's the hot seat.
Commissioner Cheatham.
I'm sorry. Move to adjourn.
All right, so second. Danced by Commissioner Herzog. Discussion.
Does this constitute a second?
I saw the hands. So. Discussion. All right, ready for the vote? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, and so we are adjourned.
Good job, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. I want my own gavel.